A week ago, a regional controller was appointed in Alice Springs. Dorelle Anderson had 7 days to come up with some interim solutions to curb crime and violence. Well, those 7 days are up and she will hand a report to government today. But we're not going to get a response until perhaps later this week, and we may never, the public, that is, may never actually see the contents of that report. The restrictions on takeaway alcohol sales have come into effect. They've been in effect for a couple of days now. Locals, you remember, were warning that those arbitrary rules would just make things worse. So, has it? Joining us live now is Matt Cunningham. Matt, thanks so much for your time. Let's talk about Alice. Has there been any improvement there? What's the word?
Well, it's probably too early to tell, but I think Alice Springs is still facing some pretty serious incidents. We saw video footage that a nurse filmed on Friday night of some pretty serious incidents in the main street. And have a look at this video as well, Laura. This was filmed on Monday afternoon of an Indigenous teenager being attacked by 3 other youths in a park in Alice Springs. And you can see in this film that one of those youths is actually holding a machete while that attack is taking place. It's a pretty serious and violent incident that's happening in broad daylight on Monday afternoon there in Alice Springs. So, I mean, I think if we thought that having 2 days of alcohol bans was going to solve all of the issues of Alice Springs overnight, that might have been an optimistic view. But we are expecting this report to be handed to the Northern Territory and federal governments today by Dorelle Anderson, who a week ago was appointed as the Central Australian Regional Controller. There has been a few rumblings about exactly who was consulted about this report. The Northern Territory Police Association says it wasn't consulted. The Alice Springs Mayor, Matt Patterson, also wasn't consulted before this report was completed. But it will be handed to the government today. No announcement expected, though, today. The Chief Minister, Natasha Fyles, will hold a news conference here at her electorate office in Darwin this morning. But I'm being told that there won't be an announcement around what they're going to do once they receive this report until at least later in the week, after she's met with Anthony Albanese in Canberra, or possibly early next week.
Okay, so that report being one thing, this is the Regional Controller's report. What difference is that going to make? And what are you hearing in terms of, you know, some of the more permanent measures the government might put in place here?
Well, the key issue that Dorelle Anderson's looking at, I think, is whether alcohol should have been allowed to return to Alice Springs town camps, and whether those intervention-era bans on alcohol in those town camps and smaller Aboriginal communities should return. Now, we've heard the Northern Territory government over the past week pushing the line that there should be a ballot in these town camps to see what the residents there think about alcohol bans. My understanding is that proposal is fast losing momentum. The federal government strongly opposed to it, Laura, but also members of the Northern Territory caucus, my understanding is they have raised their concerns about that plan, including to Aboriginal women, Selena Yubo and Naria Kit, who are both cabinet ministers within the Northern Territory government. So I wouldn't be expecting the Northern Territory government to be going ahead with this ballot idea. There's also a lot of concern about how quickly the Northern Territory Electoral Commission could get that ballot done. It's holding a by-election in the next couple of weeks after the death of an MLA on the Tiwi Islands. So from a practical point of view as well, I don't think it was a great idea. We heard from Josh Burgoyne, who is the Country Liberal Party's spokesman on Territory families. He spoke to Andrew Bolt last night. Here's what he had to say about the return of those alcohol bans.
Now, we're all holding out hope that those Stronger Futures measures that we've spoken about many times on your show will actually be reintroduced, that we will at least have a small circuit breaker in this just absolute crisis that we're dealing with. It won't fix everything, but it's a damn good place to start.
There have been a lot of people pushing for the return of those bans, not just the Country Liberal Party opposition, but we've heard from health groups who had said, Laura, that those bans should never have been lifted in the first place. But there's a broader discussion going on now as well, not just around alcohol, but also in particular around some child protection issues in Alice Springs. For years we've been showing, Laura, vision of children, some as young as 7 years old, wandering around the streets of Alice Springs late at night, sometimes hundreds of those kids on the street. We've also been hearing some terrible stories from health professionals about things that have been happening to these kids. I spoke to a doctor last week who told a story of an 8-year-old girl who was forced to wave down an ambulance to get their baby sibling to hospital because their mother was so drunk. Another incident where a woman had fallen out of a taxi, out of the back of a taxi drunk, and broken her 7-year-old son's leg. And questions are being asked about what's being done by authorities to remove children who are in unsafe situations, including those children who can be seen walking the streets late at night. Here's Josh Burgoyne again.
We need to make sure that the child's safety is the number one priority of governments. And if that means, unfortunately, that you take that young child out of a terrible environment and place them either with foster carers or in a safe place, then that is what has to occur.
So we will hear from the Northern Territory Chief Minister, Natasha Fyles. In about an hour from now, she'll be holding a news conference here in Darwin before she heads to Canberra for those meetings with Anthony Albanese. We are not, though, Laura, expecting any announcements today in regards to those alcohol bans following the handing down of that report by Dorelle Anderson.
No, there will be a few questions, though, and no doubt they'll be coming from you, Matt. That's in less than an hour's time. We look forward to hearing from Natasha Fyles. Matt, thanks so much. We'll check in soon.